I'm here. Okay, board members, let's have a seat. We're running just a little bit behind. You can have a seat. Do we have any online today? We have
I'm
full-
online.
Okay, we're going to go ahead with our roll call vote or roll call. Roll call. What is it? All right. Member Bogus?
Yes.
Thank you.
Turn left onto
Member
Shady Ridge
Ballinger?
Lane, then take the
Yes.
first right onto Will Oak
Member
Lane.
Booth?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. And if somebody online could mute, that would really help. It's coming over on the speakers. Thank you. Member Brinton? Yes, thank you. Member Davis? Member Earl? Yes. Member Green?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Member Hall? Yes, thank you. Chair Hymas?
I'm here.
Yes, thank you. Member Kelly? Yes, thank you. Member Carey?
Here.
Yes, thank you. Member Lear? Yes. Member Longacre? Yes. Member Rill? And I am here. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and start with our just a budget update where we're at through the status of legislative funding. And I think that that's, is it Dale and Nestor coming up to, is that Nestor and Sam? Thank you. Sorry about that. Just want to introduce yourself and you're free to begin.
Let's test. Oh, no, we're on. Okay. My name is Sam Uri. I'm the school finance director. And
Hello, committee. Nestor Rodriguez, economist. Hi, good to see all of you.
so we've been tasked with, responding for the agency for fiscal notes. We've responded to almost 500 between bills and subs at this point. And want to thank our team and those across the agency who have spent many hours compiling those responses, in some cases reaching out to LEAs for feedback. At this point, we respond for both USBE impacts and LEA impacts. You'll notice from the structure of the fiscal notes, if you ever look at a fiscal note, that the LEA impacts don't have a total dollar amount. In most cases for the LEA impacts, it's a range, given that the LEAs range in size from very small to very, very large. And I apologize for the format of this backup. It was finished very late at night, and most of the bills, the status of these bills is potentially out of date. But if we can, I just wanted to kind of show you, we went through our responses, and those in red we had indicated as USBE gave a response, and then the Legislative Fiscal Analyst's Office in the fiscal note gave a reduced cost, whether that was to USBE or to LEAs. And so there can be a myriad of reasons for that. We do attempt here, in our office to be as reasonable as possible and try to quantify costs as they are or will be, noting that it's always an estimate, but we also understand that the legislative fiscal analyst looks at the state budget as a whole, and sometimes there may be some disagreement about the exact impacts of the bill. So if you want to look at any of these in detail, one that was just discussed yesterday is Senate Bill 119. And if we can pull that one up. USBE, to inform our fiscal response here, looked at several different states that have implemented open educational curriculum type resources. The state of Texas had done some similar things. Senate Bill 119 is currently on its third substitute. It had had some other items impacting the fiscal impact, but at this point, the fiscal note says $64 million one time to create those open educational resources with FTE of 133,000 ongoing. USBE submitted a higher grade of a FTE. It was about 157,000, and so it was reduced by LFA. And USBE submitted an estimated cost of 130 million, and it was reduced to 64 million by the legislative fiscal analyst. Some of the reasoning behind USBE submitting a higher estimate is that this bill requires the vendor who creates the resources to give the state of Utah the intellectual property rights for that, all of those curriculum materials that would be developed. And so leaning on our experts in teaching and learning, that was the response that we came up with. But in any case, we are grateful for the support, and we don't want to denigrate the work of the Legislative Fiscal Analyst Office in any way, but just to note that sometimes there are differences in opinions on what those impacts may be, and happy to look at any of these in more detail if board members would like.
Vice Chair Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair. Sam, just a question. Well, first of all, I just want to express appreciation to all of you from our staff that have worked on these fiscal notes. I know you're doing them late at night. They're coming in fast and all of the amendments. I just want to say thank you for all of that hard work. Just a question. So in these situations, even in SB 119, if this were to pass the way it is, and then it's only funded at that rate, but then it costs more, what happens? Does USBE have to find other ways to cover that? Is it we overspend? Because I know we're also limited in what we can spend in our buckets of money. So what happens if a law is passed and there's a fiscal note that puts a burden on USBE that doesn't allow us to cover the cost?
If I may, Chair, Deputy Jones might be better to answer this. It really is up to leadership and the board on which ball we're going to drop, or we'll do our best effort. And I think you've all seen that with school construction, right? Where we have had one FTE for years and years and years for a whole state, where Colorado has 30 FTEs for schools construction, and we do the best job we can, but then an audit comes out and says, well, USBE is not fulfilling its statutory responsibilities. So in those cases, it's USBE does the best we can, right, with what we're given. But if there are cases where we're not able to completely meet those statutory obligations, it is hard to do without the proper resources. And again, I don't have a bunch of knowledge in the curriculum realm, so this particular example in Senate Bill 119, I'm not an expert on those details, but we do our level best to use the experts we do have here at USBE to inform those responses. So,
Thank you. Did you want to speak to any of that, or was that was sufficient? Okay, appreciate it. Okay, Member Earl.
Okay, hopefully this will, okay, I'm just going to say this, then you can tell me if I'm off or something. I'm just consistently noticing, and our staff have done a great job, but there's been a few of these items, and particularly when it comes to technology aspects, that I'm concerned that we have said, well, some of that we can assume. or, you know what I mean? We can, or assume, or whatever, we could, was that? Absorb, there we go. We can do that, without too many problems. And that's probably true, right? But then when you add 3 more bills that we're absorbing, right? Things that we could do that to where we've now gutted out a number of staff members, or at least it looks like we're losing 9 staff members, and that absorption does not work anymore, right? So that I have a concern that way. And I guess I'm just expressing this verbally, that I'm concerned that especially in the AI, the tech, those areas that there's, and privacy pieces, that there's a lot of provisions that could have been done if we only had 1 bill, right? But then all of a sudden it's got all these moving parts that, and fiscal notes have been dropped, right? Or lessened, and we're going to be completely stressing out the individuals that are doing this, and may have thought we can do that, which is a true statement, but we can't do that in these other 10 things. So I don't know if it would be hard at this point because things are still moving. And I know at the end, a lot of bills get kind of meshed together, right? So it's hard to know that exactly, but I do think I personally would love it if Superintendent Hart or leadership could convey that to those with EAC, or, well, it's EAC at this point, right? We're done with the public education appropriations. It would be EAC, just saying, look, as you're removing key staff members, and then these bills are asking for maybe little things, but when you add them all up, it's 9 staff members that we just lost, right? Or something like that. I'm maybe asking, I don't know if we need to make an official motion that just says you can't be removing key people and then assume that we are going to be able to just absorb those pieces that you want us to do, because we want to do them, we want to do them well, right? And that speaks to the construction, right? We do the best we can with the person we have and with what we can do, which is attestations, right? So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to draft something that would come when in our action
I'll do
time,
that.
I don't think it would be inappropriate for us to, if to speak as a board, if that's what
Okay.
we all agree on. So
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
Superintendent Hart and then Member Lear.
Of course, I welcome a motion that obviously, but I just want the board to know that those conversations are ongoing. And I have we have met, myself and staff have met with EAC, have met with legislators. I've had 4 meetings today alone to communicate those very things and to communicate the consequences of cuts that may not be obvious, so that they can make the best decision and have as much information as possible. I welcome, like I said, any sort of official conversation. Of course, I would share that. But I also want to assure you that we are doing our level best to meet with as many people and members of EAC, members of PEA. We went back and met with PEA on the advice of EAC, actually. They said, have you talked to your chairs about a couple of issues? And so we did do that. And then we have also gone back and followed up again with EAC. So those conversations are going on. We're shoving as many into the schedule as possible, but would welcome any direction that you wish, the board wishes to provide.
Member Lear.
To Member Earl's comment, I think it might be more meaningful because so many pieces are moving now. I think it might be more meaningful because the superintendent's telling us she's informing EAC, PEA, all those other acronyms all along the way that we can't, if we're losing people, we can't do these things. I think maybe at our next board meeting, it might be more meaningful to say, here's the list of things that we don't have staff to do. and making it clear that it's not like a surprise that we're saying that the board's saying this to the legislature now because of all the meetings Molly's mentioning she's having. So I think putting that in writing when all of the dust settles is maybe a more meaningful way to go. And I'm not making an official motion either. I just think give them a chance, see what really passes, see what happens, and then say, here are the places we have. I can think of three bills off the top of my head that I've been watching where they took the staff member that took the FTE out of the fiscal note. And there's just no way if that bill passes that we can do what we're supposed to do in a professional way. So I think we need to inform them in a more official way at some point.
Chair Hymas.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what the conversation is. I don't mind a motion if one does come forward, but I do want to kind of echo what Molly is saying. And the superintendency, board leadership, we are speaking on your behalf. We have not waited for a motion for you guys to say, hey, fight for us. And so we are involved in meeting. And I would, like I said, I'm happy to support a motion. But we as leadership, Molly and her staff recognize the need to speak up and say, you know, we're trying to do what you're asking us to do, but we need help. So just wanted to throw that out there so that the board can rest assured that we are advocating.
All right, any other comments from board members before we move? Does that complete your report, or do you have some additional information for us?
It does. If I can add just a small bit of context, I guess it does become difficult when there are multiple bills addressing the same concept or same potential staff impacts. We do have to respond just to that one bill at a time. But again, we appreciate all the input we've received from staff and the assistance from leadership. So
Okay,
that
thank you.
concludes our report.
So, well, do we have any numbers? Usually by this time, don't we have numbers has there been any official report of what our revenue has been?
Numbers of, excuse me, Chair, of fiscal notes?
Well, no, in terms of generally, and then maybe I'm off on my timing, but we have kind of updates on where we are in terms of the budget and what revenue has come into the state. And we always wait for that big day, and
We're all waiting for Friday.
Friday is the big day.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
They had preliminary last Friday. They had reported that they were more optimistic about the outlook, but they were still being cautious.
Okay,
So, and again, from my perspective, I can't blame them for that, considering the
Okay.
headwinds.
well, I figure if you're in the hot seat, I had to ask because you
No
usually know.
worries, yeah. I mean,
So-
just this week alone, we had the recent Supreme Court decision with tariffs, for example, last week. And again, I can't blame them for being cautious, given all these headwinds we're facing that we typically, as an economy, don't face. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Well,
All right, we have one more. Member Earl?
Yes, would it be all right if you kind of walked us through the timeline between now and next week when the legislature ends related to finance? Because tomorrow EAC will come out with preliminary exact numbers, right? Because they'll change again. Could you, just so that we're aware of how that breaks down?
Do you want
So Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones, Madam Chair, so the process is that tomorrow, the agenda is out for EAC. And to the earlier question, they will finalize revenue, the outlook. So then it could mean that we might not see some of the proposals that PEA made for reductions actually come through. But some might, we don't have an advanced copy of that or anything. So then they go into their motions, where they make the motions, not just for public education, but from the recommendations from the other committees. So then that results in work being done over the weekend by our staff, by the LFA, to build what's called or been affectionately referred to in the past as the Bill of Bills, and captures all of those motions and changes to the base budget or increases and reductions and aligns things. And we can anticipate that there will be a lot of realignment of our line items, or, as a result of all of the meetings that have been taking place between the superintendent and EAC and those types of things. So really, Friday is the big day. That's the day where things become a lot more clearer, where we'll know for sure and then that builds into the last week of the session where the finalization of the bills take place. So does that help answer the question on the timeline we're at right now? So we just
Yeah,
offered
let's
this
follow up.
to,
Yeah. And I guess maybe I'm just sharing this for, if I understand right, though, if it's a fiscal item, and which is nice, they have it marked with an F now, right?
Right. Yeah,
On the
yeah. Good, yeah,
reading
good catch,
calendars, it's
Madam
very
Chair.
transparent.
Yep.
But if there's a fiscal item and it gets to the end, and they either fund it or they don't fund it, if they don't fund it, what happens?
So now, Madam Chair, we're back into that space of the earlier question about what happens when, I think it was Vice Chair Bollinger that asked that. We take what is funded and not and do the process of setting the budget, which then you, as the board, review and approve along the same timeline as our LEAs. They do the same process as well. And it's typically there where we can draw out or say, look, we've been tasked or, by law now we're required to administer this program or add this requirement on to our staff. And we had asked, this is why we're doing this for you or with you, is to show you the differences in what we asked to do and then how we were going to make up or try to get to meeting the requirements of the law. Unfortunately, there is that aspect of, well, if we didn't get that additional FTE, then we have to find different, maybe an FTE has to take that role on that's already doing a particular program. But that's typically decided internally and by the direction of the superintendent. So does that help or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right, okay.
So what, in other words, I guess if it has the fiscal note, could it die? Or I guess it could still move forward and it's just not funded? Or does
yes.
it have to, if it has a fiscal note, there has to be some funding associated with it? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think I do understand the question. So my answer is yes, it could still move forward even if it's not funded, but they would make those changes next week or as a
They'd
result
have
of the
to
motion,
change
they would
the-
have to
The
change it.
bill in order to
Correct.
not reflect the
Yeah.
funding request. Okay,
Correct.
that's what I was,
Yes,
sorry, I
okay,
should have
I
been
see.
clear on it.
No,
Thank
no, you were clear. I get your question.
So those bills, some of those bills that have, tens of thousands of dollars that we've been told, well, if it passes without the funding, we'll just remove those parts. They'll remove those parts that would have cost.
That's the assurance we received. Yes, Madam Chair. So now, and that's part of the process that Deborah does with what we call it a crosswalk, where, okay, the bill originally came out, said this, we asked for this amount of money. Did we get that amount of money? No, we didn't. Where does it go? Those types of things are all done within like 72 hours or.
Before the end of the
Yeah,
session?
before the end of the session. No, yeah, I see the question now. Yes, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
Anyone online? No? Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions. Any other further budget items, Superintendent Jones?
No, ma'am, unless there's questions or concerns from the group. We just wanted to introduce this. It's a work in progress, but we will finalize it and it's part of the process that we just described, so.
Thank
Because
you.
there was questions about, well, are we asking for X amount of money and is it getting reduced? And
Yeah, I
the answer is
appreciate-
yes.
I
Yeah.
think we all appreciate
Yeah,
that
yeah.
extra understanding of
Okay.
what's happening between when
Yeah.
you guys send it out and what's actually being posted is there's.
Right, then it all
There's some
ties in. It
significant
all ties
concern
in
there.
together with the reviews and then the finalization of bills next week. Yes, okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other lights for that item, we will move to our review of legislation. And I don't believe we have any legislature comments today, so we'll just move right into our general session legislation and potential recommendations. We decided to group the items today into funding bills so that we have a better understanding of what's going on. For those of you who were here last year, we took another 2-hour period just to do funding explanations. So if you want a deep dive into how legislation affects education, watch our special meeting from last year at this time. And then some of our other bills where we have chunks together. So go ahead with Deputy Superintendent Nui.
All right, well, thank you, Chair. So if you refresh your civic clerk, if you're in there and looking and you refresh the civic clerk, there are a few documents that might help compare and contrast some of these groups of bills. As the chair pointed out, the first group we're talking about is the funding bill. So we'll start with SB 65. This is Senator Fillmore's minimum basic tax rate amendments. That is row number 3, if you're looking at the document on civic clerk. So this is the from last year, right?
Right.
All right. So if you remember last year, we've talked about this before, but if you remember last year, Senator Fillmore ran a bill that would essentially take the local property taxes that LEAs collect and use and send them up to the state level and then send them back to the local LEAs. There was that passed out of the legislature, but then was vetoed by the governor. Largely, you all asked for that veto as well as the state auditor. And the large concerns with that bill was that it wasn't clear what was happening, that the notice to taxpayers in the local areas was not super clear. And then there was also concerns that this would potentially in the future open up those funds to be used outside of their designated education purposes. So this is a kind of a rerun of that bill. There has been some significant changes to it in that there is a required notice that this would be a statewide property tax essentially, and that the locals would make that clear when they collected the taxes so that it is clear to the taxpayers what is happening. So there was a question last time we brought this up, whether the state auditor was on board with that. In our conversations with that office, they have said that they do believe that this updated version does meet the minimum legal requirements. Whether or not it is good policy is a different question and is up to all the policymakers to decide that, but they do believe that it meets the minimum legal requirements. So anything else?
No.
You would like to
No,
add?
that's good.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on
Yeah.
that one? Will this still require our local districts to go through the truth in taxation if they wanted to increase? Or do they have all the burden placed on them to increase the taxes, but then it all goes to the state? Or does this, because it's now a statewide property tax, does it eliminate that burden of them if they?
So, Madam Chair, it would, if I understand your question correctly, I think that's precisely why they have to notice it as a statewide thing. So, because really the truth in taxation comes in relation to their local voted and board and those types of things. So yes, I mean, conceivably, it wouldn't be part of, because we work closely with the tax commission to set the basic rate, and then all the districts have to charge that rate, right? So therein is the truth and taxation part of it. And it's set for that whole year. It's when we get into the space of the local tax proceeds that you get into the truth and taxation piece. So does that help?
This is only the
This is the
portion,
basic,
the
yeah,
very
this is the
basic.
basic
Any
rate,
of the
yes.
voted or local
They're still
levy,
subject to tax.
they
and-
go
or,
through everything,
truth
and they
tax.
keep that portion?
They do, yeah. The voted and board is not that. It's just this basic rate that would,
Okay.
then
Okay,
we
that's
turn
helpful.
around and send that amount.
I didn't think
Gotcha.
about the part they were keeping.
Right,
So
okay.
Thank you
right,
for that
yes.
clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, Vice Chair Ballinger.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, if I may ask Deputy Superintendent, is this the same bill that got vetoed last year but revamped?
Yes.
Okay.
Or-
And
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
and then my other follow-up questions, because last year some of the
Well,
concern.
Yeah. It is. So this is a new bill, but it was the same concept that was vetoed last year. Now with these changes, and that goes to what Deputy Superintendent Newey was saying, is that they feel it meets the legal requirements. So, which were the concerns and what brought on the veto. So, sorry about that.
We'll follow up. Okay, I have two more questions. So the next one is, one of the concerns last year is that the money that was used like for interest or some of that money could be spent in the general fund. Is
Correct.
that true still in SB 65? Does it allow for some of this money to be spent or flowed through to a general fund, or is it still, or is it only isolated to the special or to education?
Purposes.
Yeah, yes, yeah. So the answer is yes, that money, so the differentiation, Madam Chair, or through you to answer the question is that still is in place where the interest proceeds, right, could go for anything statewide, general fund type, transport or highway infrastructure, those types of things. However, the amount collected though, minus the interest thing, does have to go back, and we would send that to them. So really what it does is creates that concern of, well, LE or districts were using that interest for themselves, right, at that local level. But since it's a now legally termed as a statewide proceed, then the interest proceeds can be used towards general fund type requirements across the state. Did I get that right?
One more question.
It creates a fund to do that.
That can be spent on general.
Yeah, and that fund can be all general, right?
So
Yeah.
one last question. It has a fiscal note that says $886 million ongoing.
Yes, that's the estimate for the proceeds from the tax, from the basic tax
So
across the state.
So can you help me understand what that money, is that money that we're, additional money we haven't been spending that now we're going to spend on this program?
No, I think each year when we set the basic rate, we estimate how much we have to, because it's used to basically fund public education in addition to the state portion of public education. We do the estimates and we set the rate to bring in a particular amount to balance that, to meet that requirement based on our estimates. So the amount could change a little bit, but then the interest proceeds, of course, are now accounted for as going, or not going towards public ed. So Sam, did I get that right? Yeah, okay, he says north and south, so yeah. It's a revenue target, basically, yeah, it's an estimate, yeah.
Member Lair is,
Thanks. This goes back to a previous question, I think it was from Leanne or Amanda. You said that truth in taxation won't apply to the property tax, but it still
Well-
applies to the, right?
Well, so to the basic rate,
Basic
yes.
rate.
So the basic rate is based on property valuation, right? So a percentage of what the valuation is taxed using the basic rate. But by way of it being, Deputy Newey talked about it, that, I mean, I'm not sure if I can honestly say, well, yeah, it absolves them of doing it as part of truth in taxation, but I really think what they're saying is by making it a statewide announcement and saying that and disclosing that on your property tax, that this is a statewide thing, that is the,
Okay, and that's the
requirement, yeah.
lesser part of my question, but,
okay,
but I was interested in truth in taxation still applies to local and
Yes.
state levies. And proportionally, how much bigger is the property tax than
Mhm.
those levies? Are the levies half as much, or is it equal, or is
Uh,
it an approximation that I won't hold you to?
yeah, I think that varies too much. I'd have to look at that even to be approximate about that, because as you know, like say, like a district like Morgan School District, right? They've tried to do voted levies in the past and they haven't been able to get those through just at the local level. So to try to equate,
Two.
the two would be,
But it sounds
yeah.
like the property tax,
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yes, yeah. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Mhm. The statewide, sure. Yeah. Yeah, and we can send that link to the board as well. So, yeah, that's good. In addition to that, too, Board Member Davis has directed us to, as an information item at the March Finance Committee, is to consolidate all of the impacts of legislation on tax. So we will be building that and providing that at her direction. It's on the agenda for Finance Committee and at the March Finance Committee. So
Thank
we'll
you.
consolidate all this and do it, because this is not the only bill that impacts tax or potentially impacts tax.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That'll be very
Right.
helpful. All right, we've hit our 10 minutes on this. I'm not seeing any lights and no one online, so we're going to move to 521.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chair. We've got HB 521 is from Representative Walter. It came out not too long ago. I'm going to take you back just for a second to Fillmore's SB 119. That was the one with the open source resources, the kindergarten potty training, and then it also had a fiscal issue in the middle, if we remember that discussion. So this kind of solves that problem, or at least is addressing a similar concern. So in this bill, what it would do is take a chunk of the current Public Education Economic Stabilization Fund. It's sometimes called like the rainy day fund that we pull from, or the legislature pulls from, to pay for the one-time appropriations, all the projects and the programs, right? And so Representative Walter's bill would take a chunk of that and put it into a trust fund that is managed by the state treasurer. So if you think of like our state trust lands, we have a group, CITFO, that manages that trust and invests it so that there is ongoing revenue from the interest that it earns. So that would be the idea, is that we would take a portion of this current fund, invest it to make additional money, and then that would be available in future years as it continues to grow. I will say one piece of feedback that we gave, if you look at the bill on line 172, the final portion says the legislature may make appropriations related to the public education from the trust fund. And we had suggested that maybe we change that to the legislature shall make appropriations related to public education, because there could be some wiggle room there as to using it beyond. I don't know if that was intended or not, but that was a piece of feedback that we provided on that one. So wanted to bring that to your attention. Anything else?
Thank you. Any
So
comments?
if, Madam Chair, if I can just,
Yes,
and I haven't
please.
had a chance to get back with my Jedi BA, Mr. Hobber, as his Padawan. So he was talking to them about this too, because I don't know if we're all clear on why do this as a trust fund, unless it's something to help with offsetting revenue, say, related to the tax cut, like an income tax cut, right? That you build, a fund based on interest and then use it. This is why my concern was, well, why can't you just change it to shall, that the proceeds will be used for shall, so we're not maybe in the same space as SB 65, or, where it's like, okay, well, the interest proceeds can be used for something else besides public education. So Dr. Newey and I got together and we were like, can we just get that shall in there, right? So we can try to I'm still not really clear on why we need the trust fund, unless it's for that reason, like you're trying to get interest to, offset potential reductions in revenue in other places. I could see that, but I haven't had a chance to circle back to him on whether they got that question answered too on the trust aspect of it. So we'll try to come back on that. But the shall really is generated to try to get some level of assurance that no matter what method is used to get that revenue, that it all comes back to public education or stays in there. So hopefully that helps. So
Member Davis.
I was just going to say, I actually am just in queue for a motion when it's time.
Was it related to this bill?
It's
when we get into the, well, and we can make them this is all an action item. So if it's related to something, as we go through, we could stop and make a motion according to that specific bill. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, not seeing any other lights. Let's move to SB 58.
Thank you, Chair. So SB 58 is a little less about funding than the other two have been. This one is public school attendance amendments from Senator Fillmore, and this would change for LEAs the way that they are funded for some of their programs for their attendance. So it would differentiate between attendance validated programs where they are funded on how often students are actually there in person. And then there would also be, sorry, my brain is broken today, the learner validated program. So that's where a student would not necessarily need to be present all of the time, but would need to meet standards, academic standards, in order to have shown that they met the standard for that program, right? So it would divide schools' programs up into the two different groups. And I believe we've talked about this one before, so just wanted to review it.
Vice Chair Bollinger.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair. Oh,
Just a clarifying question. Does this change then how some of our funding's done from an average daily membership to an average daily attendance model,
Correct.
like other states do? So this completely changes the funding model for education?
Well, Madam Chair, if I may, no, I'm not sure for everyone, right? It is, yes, it's obviously a different method, but, so you mean everyone through the chair, Madam Chair, does she mean everyone like charter schools, districts? Okay. Well, yes, we'd all be held to the same standard for the reporting of the attendance that results in the formula application. So is that the question you're asking, and am I answering, or?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know, so right now, schools are funded, my understanding is schools are funded off of average daily membership.
Right.
But this would shift it to, so if schools have students that are enrolled but are not showing up and are excused for
So, yeah.
rodeo, for bike, so we wouldn't get any money for the days that those kids are not in school?
Subject to how they're reported, right? So if they're excused or those type of things, they could still be counted, but now we're into that space of how they are coded and whether or not that counts towards attendance. An excused absence, an unexcused absence, an excused absence for this particular purpose, or those types of things, we get into that attendance realm, so.
Chair Hymas, and then I think Member Kelly. Oh, Member Rill, apologize.
yeah, thank you. I'm trying to crudely understand this. Am I hearing that if you are smarter, then you don't have to go to school, but if you struggle, then you do? Is this, again, this is crude, but just trying to boil this down. And Scott, I don't know if that's for you, Chair, if you'll direct it or answer it. Either way, I'm just seeking understanding.
Due to my desire to retire in 1 year, I do not want to answer that question. So no, it's a good question, Madam Chair. I don't know if that's the reason why, but I could certainly see that could be the perspective, is that it's designed around flexibility for students that, may be ahead of others, not based on Scott's judgment or anything like that, but I do see his question or concern that it could lead to, well, we can still count you for attendance, but you can go on that trip with your family for 2 weeks because you're ahead in your last test scores were such that. Is that the way he's going, or Chair Hymas, is that?
Chair Hymas, any follow-up?
Just appreciate the clarity. I think I understand, and I thought I understood before. Just wanted to make it clear for me anyway. I think this would be a challenge for schools. Honestly, I don't know what the threshold is because each teacher grades differently. Who's to say a student is successful? What does that look like? Is that a C where a C minus is not, or a B where a B minus is not, right? So anyway, just some
Right.
thoughts and concerns. Thank you, Scott, and thank you,
Yeah.
Chair.
And then, Madam Chair, could we go back to Vice Chair Bollinger's question about does it change the, we need to clarify that a little bit further. Sam has come up and he's going to save me, so.
Okay,
No,
yes,
well,
go
I
ahead
think we
and
were
clarify,
saying
and
the
then we
same
do have
thing,
a
but I
comment
just
from
we
Member
want to make
Rill,
sure. Okay,
so,
yes, ma'am. Your direction.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I began my career as an agriculture teacher in California, and they would have raffles for iPads because they are funded on average daily attendance, right? So if the kid is not in the seat, then they're not receiving funding. This bill does not completely remove average daily membership from our funding model. It's more geared toward attendance, though, and having LEAs be more responsible and having USBE have a role in ensuring that LEAs are giving good attendance data. Could it lead to further, if you read the tea leaves, maybe in 5 years when the data is better, and then maybe it would make more sense to be able to do that, to fund off of average daily attendance, but no, it doesn't completely change the funding model.
And Madam Chair, if I may too, though, to Chair Hymas's concern or question, I can see the flexibility, we'll call it that for now, on how they're coded. I mean, it is an accountability for attendance, but it could lead to other flexibility type concerns or considerations for a student being actually in the seat and those types of things. So,
Okay,
so I
thank
think,
you.
is that fair, Sam?
Yeah.
Both? I
Thank
mean, yeah,
Member Rill?
but the formula doesn't change.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm thinking about this in the bigger picture from the, a 10,000 foot level. And some of these data and reporting requirements are quite extensive.
Right.
And what we know from our attendance audit and what we know from our data audit is that we are not in a place to have accurate data or a great reporting, because LEAs oftentimes, we found in that data report that some LEAs aren't, their SIS is outdated. They're not tracking data appropriately. So it concerns me that this bill requires such robust data input from LEAs in a space that we currently are in as we navigate the SIS, where we are not collecting great data because we're working on it, of course, but we're not creating great data. And to be honest, just stresses me out that we're asking LEAs to have all these additional data reporting requirements when we're not really there on reporting graduation, for example.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's a great question. We appreciate the question or the concern. The implication is if this bill does pass through, that you in rule would emphasize, it implies this, that you would emphasize standards. And we clearly, and it was brought out by Board Member Reel, that there is a lot of difference in how often attendance records are submitted in their systems. You might have a particular LEA that mandates that, weekly rosters of attendance be rolled up. Whereas sometimes, and again, according to the audit, there was differences in how often that occurred. And then we get into the whole aspects of the local policies on tardiness. If you're only this amount of time late to the first period, you're only tardy. But if you don't attend X amount of time in that particular class, you're absent. So, and then, then it cascades into whether it was excused or unexcused and those aspects. The standardization really would need to happen. And then that puts us in the space of, well, is that violating local control and standard setting for attendance for our students? So there are implications of this bill along the lines that Board Member Reel described. So.
Thank you. So that We've reached our 10 minutes. Do we have any further, member Earl, did you?
Madam Chair, Director Yuri has
Okay.
some
Just-
value add.
Yeah, just quickly, along with SB 58, the fiscal note does indicate that it would cost $30,000 to $50,000 per LEA for a new staff member. And that roughly equates to about $6 million. And that is in the fiscal note, but there's no appropriation for LEAs to have that position.
So
So
the cost is there, but there's no appropriation to help accommodate that cost. Okay, thank
Correct.
you.
And that's why we want to correlate that and wrap all that up at the end of the session is, so there's none in there right now. I don't anticipate they will put any in there. I mean, they could, but we're not to the end of the session yet. So we'll correlate all this or,
Great.
you know. we
Okay,
need to,
thank
so.
you. Member Earl, did you have a comment to this?
Not to this.
Okay.
I just in for a motion as soon as.
Okay. Well, I know we're about halfway through. I think we have two more funding bills. Do you want to finish the two funding bills? Okay. Member Davis, are you comfortable with finishing the two funding bills and then we'll move to your motion? Okay. Well, we should, Deputy Superintendent Nui, did you want to continue? Okay, thank you.
I'm great at this. I would much rather.
Yeah, he does that.
So
to
we're
me,
going
too.
to cut the discussion on these bills to 5 minutes each. We've been doing 10, but let's do about 5 minutes and that will make sure we don't run out of time for those that want to.
Okay, our next one is SB 62. Computer is finding its brain as well. Okay, so SB 62 modifies the formula for determining a school district's weighted pupil units. So essentially it removes the hold harmless, and what it would do is reallocate that hold harmless funds that normally would go back to the districts and would reallocate them for the at-risk add-on and students with a self-contained special education status. So if you have been following Representative Miller's bill that creates a new formula for the WPU in order to fund students who need more than 100 or 180 hours or more of special education services in a week, it would, or not in a week, but this would fund that. Whether or not, you know, again, that's good policy or what we want as a state or what LEAs want is a different question. But that is what I believe is the why behind this bill, is that it would take that hold harmless funds and put it directly into those two accounts.
All right, there's no lights. Why don't we move ahead to, oh, all right, Member Earl.
I didn't check. This didn't move. Did this move forward? I didn't think this, or I may think of a different one. Is this the special education one?
The special education, so Representative Miller's did not.
Okay, so I'm kind of mixing them up maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this would kind of do a similar thing. And we did make sure that both of those bills did use the same definition. So
Okay.
this would kind
That's
of get
probably
to
why I'm
that.
getting him confused. I think peripherally, right? I was trying to figure out what.
It's easy to get all of these bills confused right at this point.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Senator Fillmore was on a podcast with other legislators on Sunday evening, and he spoke to the fact that he had bills that were coming through that would give local LEAs the opportunity to spend money on things that they really want, and yet they didn't like it. Is this one of those bills that he's referring to?
I think this could fall under that because it is taking money that they would have received in one area and put it in another area where there is need. Whether or not that is what LEAs want or not, and why, I cannot speak to.
I get that. I was just trying, he didn't give, I went back to re-listen to it to
Yeah.
see if he gave the bill numbers,
Oh,
because
okay.
I wanted to see these magic bills that were just giving money to LEAs.
This
And so,
could be one of those.
okay, thank you. I'll work on my diplomacy, sorry. Yes, Vice Chair Ballinger.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm reading in the summary where it says that that it creates the special education self-contained WPUs. So does this incorporate what Representative Miller was doing as well? So my question is because if this bill goes through and it passes and there's funding for that, because that's why Representative Miller's got held, does this also automatically increase the WPU for special ed, or just creates that account and puts money into it?
Yeah. Okay, so starting on lines, if you're looking at the bill, looking at line 70, would say, so it defines what the self-contained special education weighted pupil unit would be. And then it says that a self-contained special education weighted pupil unit is equal to 1 pupil in average daily membership. I don't know that it does.
I think it does.
You think it does the exact same thing? We're phoning friends all left and right today. Does it do the exact same thing that Matt was trying? Yeah. Okay.
The answer is yes, it does do in effect what the intent was by Representative Miller's bill.
The difference, the difference would be that rather than funding that separately, it would come from funds and that are already being given to LEAs and just reappropriate them for a new use. What Miller's was doing was creating the formula and then funding it separately. So
It's not
in
new
addition
money.
to current funding.
It's not new money.
Yes, this is reappropriated money.
Did you have a?
Yeah, just to follow. So my question as well, so if this one were to go through and it helps get that money for the special ed specifically, but it's taking money from somewhere else, but we have other language that we've asked Representative Miller to put in her bill, as well as my understanding, to codify how we do our WPU for like our preschool, those types of things.
That wouldn't be included.
But so those pieces wouldn't go through, but there may be a chance for them to collaborate. I'm just curious to know, because if the end game is to fund the extra WPU and there's a way to do that, I'm just curious to know if we would want to combine some of that other language.
So we've already worked with both sponsors to make sure that the definition is the same so that it does capture the same population of students that Representative Miller was looking to capture. I guess that is a question for this body, is if you all are okay with the idea of that funding coming from somewhere else in the LEA rather than from a new source.
All right, let's move on.
All
Next
right.
one is SB 119 with Fillmore.
So SB 119 is no longer a funding bill, but we wanted to put it on here in case you had heard that and wanted to keep updated. This is the one where it had the open source resources for schools, and then that funding piece, and then the toilet training. It has taken out both the toilet training and the funding piece. So it is now just the open educational resources and curriculum development. So the other pieces have been moved elsewhere. Just letting you know.
Okay, great. And then we have HB 188.
Okay, the next one is HB 188 from Representative Peck. This is the juvenile justice amendments. We're bringing this one to you because this has been a big topic with our juvenile justice groups, and we just wanted to make you aware of it. It doesn't have a huge impact on schools necessarily, but it would on young people. This has been through several different drafts. The latest draft, if I could summarize it in one sentence, would be that it makes drug possession unable, well, for the first time, if a student was caught in a drug-related offense, they could go through an alternative justice situation, right? So they could go through some sort of program or counseling type of thing. But on the second offense, they would have to face detention. And so this would be a move in a different direction than Utah's been moving in juvenile justice. I would say a few years ago, they removed this language from our code based on some research that it was better for kids to kind of go through these alternative programs rather than the detention center pathway. So there's been ongoing conversations with the juvenile justice groups about what is best. I believe, and I'll points to Vice Chair Ballinger that they are now on board and supporting this latest draft.
Vice Chair Ballinger.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I had asked this one to be added on because I sit on the CCJJ, the Juvenile Justice Commission, for our board as a board member, and they did discuss this. Originally, there was an opposition to it because it was the very first offense that had to go to court. And they were saying that, you know, we want to give kids make mistakes and it's learning opportunities. So this one where it is by the third one, because we also don't, what they were saying is they don't want repeat offenders never being held accountable or learning. So I just, when they took a vote to support, because we hadn't talked about it, I abstained because I didn't have any feedback. So if anybody has feedback, not that you have to take a motion or a set, but if there's anything that you have concerns or things that you support, I would just love to hear from this body if there are feelings. And if there's not, either way, then that's okay as well.
Member Lair, did you have a comment to this one?
I hadn't really focused on this bill, so it's interesting. And I'm real familiar with CCJJ. Actually, I served on it years ago myself. But I'm realizing that it's just about students who commit the drug offense at school. So other things could happen, other places that would affect the referral to juvenile court or not. Do you know, Amanda?
I don't know that it affects it may be compounded, right? If they've had offenses outside of school and that might, but this is specifically to school, yes.
Interesting. Okay, thanks.
There was some additional language in there in the first drafts about kind of search and seizure on school property that was problematic as well. Most of that has also been taken out. Yeah, that might be.
All right, so that concludes, I have no other light. That concludes all of our bills in that section. I'm going to turn the time to Member Davis. You said you had a motion that you wanted to move forward.
I do, thank you. I move, and I sent this to Greg, Director Connell. I move to ask staff to thank Senator Colmore and SB 267 bill drafters for working on a new sub and continue to work specifically on 1, adequate FTE, 2, extended implementation time, and 3, a possible working group to look at language feasibility, which may include a tiered approach, et cetera.
This is the bill that we spoke to last week. Is that accurate?
Correct.
All right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can that motion be put on so we can see it before we discuss it?
I can speak to it while you
Yeah, go ahead. Thank
are
you.
getting it up to
Okay,
save
I just
time
wanted
if-
to make sure we had it before you spoke to it, but if you send it to them, please go ahead.
Okay. We just, and Member Earl can weigh in on this too, but we serve on our data advisory group, and we have tech experts from all across the state, LEAs, but also industry. And we talked about this bill a little bit and, you know, with Director Chalice as well. And to do what's in the bill, we need to have FTE. And the amount that's in there now doesn't equate even to 1 hire. And so it just is not enough to do what they're asking us to do. The next thing is that while the intent is really great, some of the language is written in a way that you're not just looking at, for example, like an individual academic software. You're trying to prove academic efficacy for some system that may not even be student facing, like a human resource system or something like that. So it's just I think some changes need to be made in the language. And we have a great working group already that they may want to consider using to help make this so that the intent is met, but it's also feasible to implement. And also, you know, of course, the extended implementation time. I know they're working on this already, and I think we just need to reach out and thank them because we asked for this last week, but then reiterate those 3 things.
Okay, Member Earl to this motion?
Yeah, I would agree with what was just said, and And I've been able to convey just some of those thoughts to the individuals that are moving this forward after our advisory group, which I think you got, I think all board members did receive the advisory group from Tuesday. I think they have the summary. So you'll get a feel for what the concern is or what the thoughts are. I do think that there is a need in this area, but there is also a need for clarity so that we have the right resources in front of the right students and that teachers are aware that it's not just resources because we have them on our data dictionary, our metadata dictionary, that they're actually resources that prove to be effective. So I think to help kind of sort some of that out, I think it would be good. And I do think there was extension on that timeline piece that would be valuable for our staff too. So.
All right, thank you. Could we add to the motion just software in education amendments, the title of the bill, just so that it just clarifies for those reading? Thank you. Are there any comments, any online comments to this motion? No? Okay. Looks like we'll go forward with a vote then. The motion is that the board directs staff to thank Senator Collimore for the work on SB 267 software education amendments and the drafting of the newest substitute, and that the board directs staff to continue working with the sponsor on 1, adequate FTE associated with the bill, 2, an extended timeline for implementation, and 3, the creation of a possible work group to study the feasibility of various approaches such as a tiered implementation. We'll go ahead with our roll call vote. Member Rill? Yes. Member Longacre? Yes. Member Lear? Yes. Member Carey?
Yes.
Yes. Member Kelly? Yes. Member Chair Hymas?
Yes.
Yes. Member Hall? Yes. Member Green?
Yes.
Yes. Member Earl? Yes. Member Brinton? Yes. Member Davis? Yes. Member Booth?
Yes.
Yes. Member Vice Chair Ballinger?
Yes.
Yes. Member Bogus? You dropped off? Okay, thank you. So she's absent and I am a yes. So that motion passes unanimously, 14 with 1 absent. Okay, Member Earl, you had a motion.
I do have a motion. And it would be, and this speaks to what I spoke to a little earlier, but that the board directs the superintendent and board leadership to clearly convey to EAC the board's strong concerns about reducing USBE staff positions while simultaneously increasing expectations for the remaining staff or the remaining employees.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Member Davis. Would you like to speak to that?
I think I did speak to it earlier, but I will just say that it just seems like there's a lot of moving parts to the point where there's some uncertainty, and that they really need to be looking at what is it we need to do, what they're asking us to do. So anyways, yep.
Okay. Any comments to this motion? Online? Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Okay. All right, we have some lights. Go ahead, Member Lear and then Member Davis.
I just very briefly, because I spoke to it too. I think putting this in writing would be more significant. I don't care. I don't know how you usually put stuff in writing if when you're in leadership or the superintendent's office, but whether it's an email or text or something, but just telling them, it doesn't help us a month from now or a year from now when we can't do what we're told to do. But to say, remember this memo we sent you or email we sent you, saying we could not do this, or we have these concerns, I think is a lot more meaningful than just a recollection of a conversation.
So would you like to make an amendment that this be in writing?
In writing, it could say to clearly convey in writing to EAC. That
would be
just
your
a
amendment.
So
Okay.
just something that we can actually point to when this comes to pass.
Okay, thank you. Member
I'd
Earl,
second that.
you would be fine with that. Is there any objections to adding the in writing?
I'm not in love with it. I'm going to throw it out there, but
Do I need to vote on this, Chair Hymas?
well, no, you don't need to vote on it, but I'm just telling you, and I know that I hear what Member Earl is saying. Chair, if I may speak.
Well, I'm just asking if I have to make a roll call vote on this because you just voiced an objection.
Yeah, well, okay. All right, well, I'll just uh abstain from the vote. So if you want to call it 13 in favor and 1 abstention, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead and speak to this, Chair Hymas.
I just, thank you. It's kind of difficult, and I get that I'm in a different position. 2 years ago, I'd probably be like, yeah, put it in writing. Do staff do this, and this. Board leadership do this, and this. Unfortunately, I have the blessing to serve as board chair now, and so it's a little bit different perspective. And I am working hard to push the voice of the board. I know that our vice chairs are pushing hard. We can put this in writing. We can do these things. That's fine. It's just more energy and more work into, I don't know what the outcome is supposed to look like. And quite honestly, I feel pressure. And again, this is just now Matt Hymas just expressing some personal things. I feel pressure to make sure that we get it right for the board. And I want to make sure that what we're doing is obtainable and meaningful. So that's my rant. I'm stepping off my soapbox and we can go from there.
Okay, we have Member Davis and then Member Carey. And is this to the amendment of the motion right now in writing? Because Member Davis, did you want to speak to the in writing part?
No, I can speak to it later. It's helpful to have it in writing, a very simple, clear message, but I also hear what he's saying.
All right, I technically, because there was an objection, we have to vote on it. We have to vote, so. Did member to speak? No? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and vote. This is the amendment to put it into writing. Just because I don't want to be called out for not doing things properly. So I think Bogus is still out. So Vice Chair Bollinger, motion to add in writing, yes. Member Booth?
Yes.
Yes. Member Davis?
Yes.
Yes. Member Brinton? No. Member Earl? Yes. Member Green?
Yes.
Yes. Member Hall? Yes. Member Chair Hymas?
No, and thank
No.
you, Member Brinton.
Member, Member Kelly? Yes. Member Carey?
Yes.
Yes. Member Lear? Yes. Member Longacre? No. Member Rill? Yes, and I am a yes. That motion to add in writing passes. 12 in favor, 11 in favor, 3 opposed. Opposed were Member Brinton, Chair Hymas, and Member Longacre, and 1 absent. Okay, back to the motion to inform EAC. Member Davis and then Member Carey, I still have you.
I don't know if this needs to be a formal amendment, but I would like to request when this goes in writing, the motion maker's original words. She said, we're asking this because we have a desire to fulfill the expectations and to do them right and to do them well. And I think it's important to include that in this expression of concern.
Okay. Is there any objection to adding the language referring to that we have the desire to do the work right,
Meet the expectations.
to meet the expectations of legislation? Okay, I'm not hearing any objections. We will add that. Thank you. Member Carey?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yeah, I'm going to abstain. I like the premise and I understand the reasoning, but as I understood what was shared today, Chair Hymas and Superintendent Hart are both saying that this is already being communicated, it's already being done, and I understand the board coming out with a vote maybe puts an exclamation mark on that, but I was at Senate Ed yesterday, and I think I counted 5 board members there. And I think that's great. And they're all having conversations with different legislators and different stakeholders. And I think that's part of our job. So I think that this is not necessary, but I understand the reasoning, and I'm just going to abstain in the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Carey. Any other online comments? Okay, we'll go ahead to the vote. The motion is that the board directs the superintendent and board leadership to clearly convey in writing to EAC the board's strong concerns about reducing USBE staff positions while simultaneously increasing expectations for the remaining employees in order to meet the legislative expectations. Member Davis, does that last line, is that sufficient to what you were hoping to achieve in order to meet the legislative expectations?
I just think we need to say the board has a desire to meet legislative expectations.
All right.
I
for
mean,
the
you can word
remaining-
it however you're going to word it in the letter, so it
Yeah,
sounds
I
good.
I just want to make sure that we've got the intent.
Yes.
Okay. Member Brenton?
Yeah, I understand the desire behind the motion, and it is hard when it puts a burden on staff when they're wanting more expectations for something, but saying reduce staff. I know everybody's been told to cut across the board, and it's been rough all the way around. I just sense that we are at a place where we have more conversations with legislators, more invitations to come to the table to work on legislation. So I just worry about how we approach things so that it's in a collaborative way, so that we could, because I do appreciate that our opinions are being asked for with legislation, with bills that are coming forward. What does the board think? Is this necessary? And from what I have been told, that hasn't really happened in the past. So I appreciate that we're being invited to the table.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we'll move ahead then. Sorry to have had to fix that. So moving ahead with the vote that the board directs the superintendent and board leadership to clearly convey in writing to EAC the board's strong concerns about reducing USBE staff positions while simultaneously increasing expectations for the remaining employees because the board has a desire to meet the legislative expectations. Vice Chair Bollinger?
Yes.
Yes. Member Booth?
Yes.
Yes. Member Davis? Yes. Member Brenton? Abstain. Member Earl? Yes. Member Green?
Yes.
Yes. Member Hall? Yes. Chair Hymas?
No, but I will say I am going to fight for whatever passes. I want the board to know that.
Thank you. Member Kelly? Yes. Member Carey?
Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. Member Lair? Yes. Member Longacre? No. Member Real? Yes. And I am a yes.
Yes, it's 2 no's and 2.
Okay. No, okay. Okay, that motion passes with 10 yeses, 3 noes, and 1 abstention. The noes being Member Brenton, Member Hymas, and Member Longacre, and the abstention being Member Carey. All right, thank you. We have 8 minutes left. Is there any other work that the board would like to do? Member Real?
Thank you. I was interested in asking a couple questions about what was in our backup with the civics bills. Specifically, I heard from some social studies folks in one of my districts about some concerns about some of the content in 312 specifically. And I guess I'm not going to tell you guys, well, I'm going to say it anyways, but for the 90,000th time, I teach Introduction to American Government and Politics. I've taught it for almost 15 years at the college level. And so I'm pretty passionate about how we're teaching civics and making sure that we're teaching civics. But it feels like overall, my biggest perspective is that it seems like the legislature loves to get into the nitty gritty about how we're teaching civics. And to me, that's hard because I feel like we are, having been on standards and assessment for 3 years, and I feel like we do a great job of looking more holistically and overall at the standards and how they're taught and how they fit in and how they align. And when we have a bunch of bills that come out that say, we want to make sure that this and this and this is included in our civics, or if it was science or whatever it is, it makes it a lot more complicated for us to have those standards and honestly causes a lot of confusions for our LEAs. And so I had a few thoughts on this 312. One is that first one is that it feels a little nitpicky, and it should be, I think, and I believe, at the direction and our role to provide those standards. And then the other part that is concerning to me is that they've integrated a lot of these historical documents, which I think are really important, but oftentimes when you integrate it into ELA, for example, you're asking an ELA teacher whose expertise is grammar and sentence structure and maybe Shakespeare, which could be considered a historical document, I suppose, to teach about the background and the context of those historical documents. And in order to have good reading comprehension, that background of those historical documents are really important. And the students aren't going to get what we want them to get from having those historical documents integrated. And then the last one, and one that I sort of have a question about, is the piece about the high school history course being broken up into 2 semesters when a student needs a full year of credit. And I feel like that kind of creates a lot of work for administrators and counselors when managing scheduling. So I'm not sure if anyone else has brought up that concern with this bill. And then the last note I'll say about this is that obviously, and this goes without saying, is that I'm continuously frustrated by these lists of documents and things that they want students to learn about that completely ignore female voices as well as Native American voices. And so that's always troubling for me as well. So the question about the 2 semesters.
I'm going to phone a friend for this one who's been working on this a lot.
Thank you.
Can fill you in on that one.
Okay.
Thank you. It's Jennifer Wadsworth. I'm the policy advisor. So initially, when we did go through the rule and standards and assessment, we did have the course as broken up into the 2 separate semesters so that there was the ability to shift that. And the feedback that we received from the sponsor was that it was always his intent that that was meant to be a full semester course. So as we worked with him on that and he saw the flexibility that we had allowed initially, he wanted to be able to retain that, but he did not want it to be repeated. So this was the compromise that was delivered, was that it can still have that flexibility, but you cannot repeat it. So I'm not sure if that answers the question or provides some clarity.
You have a follow-up?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Compromise is good. I guess my other question is maybe you guys can talk a little bit about, because there's so many of these civics bills, like, is there discussion or movement to try and combine them? I mean, I'm not sure I have the votes for this, but I would love for leadership and staff to work to also discuss with these legislators about how our standards process works, because a lot of these civic bills, we already have it all in our standards. So it's just causing chaos. It's adding staff resources. It seems really ineffective. And so I'm not sure if you could update us on what you're doing to work to try and maybe not run any of these bills and or find a way to put them all together into one that doesn't duplicate what we already do in our standards.
I love that. Can I answer that, Chair?
Speak to that.
So if you'll notice, the sponsor on 312 is the sponsor of another civics bill. So they are attempting to try and combine their efforts. I think that the frustration for us as a policy team is a lot of times we're not aware that there are those bills that are coming unless they've reached out to us. So we were aware that there would be at least the one civics bill, and the other one, at least from my understanding, kind of blindsided us. Yeah. But this specific bill that we were just referencing, the sponsor felt that his concern was lying in the inability to see that social studies were being taught, specifically to the degree that he would like them to be taught, or he feels that they need to be taught. So his concern was that it was being lost in what's being tested, and he needed some assurance. And that was where this bill came down to the assurances, was to have that understanding of, we do have these standards in place, to which the response was, great, let's make sure that that's being met. So we are working.
And I will say HB 312 is supposed to be a combination of Representative Ivory, Representative Welton, and Representative Auxier. Auxier is currently carrying it, but this includes a lot of the language from Welton's earlier bill. He has not formally dropped his other bill, so 518 is still out there. And we don't know what will happen in the next week and a half. I will say we are putting together a kind of crosswalk of all of the bills that will impact standards and standards revisions, because we are also seeing a similar concern. I will say for two reasons. I think one that you brought up of the board's constitutional authority. The standards process is a big part of what the board is supposed to be doing. And there is a lot more prescriptiveness going into legislation. And I just want to make sure that the board feels in control and is doing what what you all want to be doing. I think the second one is cost. In the past, we have never been funded where there is not a line item in your budget for standards revisions. Standards revisions has just come from existing pots of money, and we are now running out of that money. And so looking forward, as we're looking at 9 different bills that require standards revisions of some sort, understanding where is that money going to come from, how long is this going to take, and being able to communicate that clearly to legislators that, you know, if you have an implementation date of 2 years from now, but so do 8 other bills, we cannot reasonably do that many standards in 2 years. And so I think that is a conversation we're having right now, but I think that would be a great conversation for this board to have in the year moving forward so that we can be ready for that next session.
Oh, all right, we're at 1:30. We have 2 comments, Member Earl and then, we have 3, Member Lear and then Member Brinton. One concern I have is that when we do a standards process, we have a 90-day comment period from the public. We have a writing committee of teachers who've been teaching for 10 to 20 years. Like, we go through this thorough process. We have vetting for whether or not it's adequately, you know, with all populations, like it's fair, and when they throw it in legislation, it does not have that same vetting. So I have a concern with that. Member Earl first.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that there were 3 bills, right? And that they met and they wrapped them in, because you had Ken Ivory's bill and then Auxier's and then Welton's. So there's provisions from all 3 of those that made it here. Now, whether there's still, and it sounds like there's still some room for some suggestions or recommendations. The one will be in the Senate, right? This one will be in the Senate. So, and then there is others coming from the Senate this way, right? So, yeah, I don't know. And you said someone's putting together a list of things that would impact currently, I guess, because they haven't passed yet.
Yeah, so we're working on we've got 2 lists. We've got a kind of a crosswalk of the civics specifically that we've been watching, and I believe that one's in your backup in civic clerk, so you
Okay.
can kind of see where those are currently at. And then we're making another crosswalk of all bills that impact standards. So whether it's computer science or health standards or civics, all those.
Okay, Member Lear and then Member Brinton.
My concern's a little different. I think my concern goes to the the motion that was just passed about how can this possibly, the work can be done by the board, because I don't see any monitoring. Assessments, I guess, will provide some monitoring, but how many kids opt out of assessments these days? And then secondly, I don't want it to turn into a gotcha kind of thing. Suddenly we got a bunch of professional practices cases because teachers aren't teaching the documents they're supposed to be teaching. And I worry about that gotcha element of this. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, aside from being a little territorial about the board's role, I don't mind the legislators weighing in about, this is what we'd like to see taught in social studies. But if it turns into a more highly monitored process, I find that very troubling.
Member Brenton.
Yeah, I just wonder if during interim, if there is a way to sit down with the education committee and the standards committee and kind of go through our process and explain where is it that when they have concerns like this or things they'd like to see, that we can incorporate that in and implement it without it having to be legislation versus when they need to step in. I just thought that might be really helpful.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything online? No, okay, Vice Chair Ballinger.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second? That's non-debatable. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.